Hey everybody, this is Laurie Meyer from stampedgreetings.com, and today I want to share with you some cards that I have made with the Texture Chic Memories and More products. And I want to show you, you can see the three examples that I'm sharing. I want to show you where you can find those in the catalog. These are in the annual catalog, and they are on page 136. So if you go to page 136, you'll see that there is a card pack and then also some cards and envelopes. And these, in my opinion, are really great for the price. And I'm going to show you a little bit more. And I'll also go through and give you some tips and tricks and some other things on these cards. So you can see these three cards are pretty different. Each one starts with one of the cards and envelope that come in the set. You get 20 cards, card bases, and 20 envelopes in the set, and these are $12 for 20. The card bases are bigger than an A2. When they are folded, they're actually 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. So they definitely are a little bit bigger. They've got a beautiful pattern on the front. And then they come with these gorgeous envelopes that have a lovely floral on the inside. And then on the outside, this mimics one of the dies that is in the Chic dies collection, and we'll look at that in a minute. But those are the Memories and More Texture Chic cards and envelopes, and again you get 20 in the package. And you can marry those with the card pack. And a good friend of mine a few years ago said that she was enjoying making cards out of a Memories and More card pack. And I'll be honest with you, until she mentioned it, I hadn't really looked at these, and they're fun. It's almost like having pieces of pre-cut designer series paper that have even more patterns than what you will find in the designer series paper that correspond with the cards. You get quite a few of the smaller cards. These measure 3 by 4. So these are 3 by 4. They're double-sided. One side typically has a really pretty pattern. The other side typically has words or maybe a more structured kind of geometric design. And you can see that there are quite a few that you get, all different colors, all different patterns, just really, really pretty and very, very easy to work with. It's kind of hard to narrow down what you want to use when you go through and look at these cards. You also get several that measure 4 by 6. And many of these mirror the patterns that you see on the smaller cards. They also have double-sided, typically one side being the design, another side being words, or a nice little pattern like this that you can use on a card or scrapbooking, or really any project that you might want to add a little bit more interest. And then there are also 4 pages of stickers. There are 2 each, 2 different designs, and they have, you can see here, leaves, some words, some really pretty script, and also some flags, different seasons, and other pieces that you can put on your projects as well. And those are $10, and you definitely get quite a few. So I have 3 designs here, and I'm going to talk to one of them, the one in the middle. I'm just going to talk about this and kind of explain what I did. It's not mystical or magical. And then I want to spend just a few minutes on each of the other 2 designs, the one on the bottom left and the one on the bottom right. So I'm just going to pick this one up first. And this is a pretty straightforward card. It uses the card base, as you can see. And I chose one of the smaller cards, the one that measures 3 by 4. That became the backdrop. I'm going to talk in a minute about this gorgeous die cut that I made with the Chic dies. And I layered some additional dies from the Chic die set. And I cut those out with different colors that corresponded to the card that I chose. And then I used another set of dies that I'll bring out to just layer this up. So what I wanted to show you is that this is a pretty easy card to put together. There's not a lot of stamping involved. I did stamp the sentiment that goes right in the middle, but the real color, the pop of color, is all due to that 3 by 4 card from the card pack. And it's so easy to just layer things up. But let's talk a little bit more about a couple of the products that I use in addition to the cards. This is the Chic die set, minus one of the dies. And that's the die that is missing here. I'm going to show you that in a second. There are 19 dies in this set. And just a tip, if you ever get a collection of dies like this, the first thing that I do before I take any of them off, I get my phone and I snap a picture. The reason is you will never, under God's blue sky, remember where these go. It will not happen. And you're going to try to put them back so that they all fit on here. It will not work. If you take a picture, you have exactly how you need to put them back on the sheet. Obviously, you can transfer these to another case that might have a magnet, and the order that you have these in that magnet case might not be the same. But if you intend to keep them on this, take a picture. Trust me, it works. The die that's missing is one that I want to show you. It is probably my favorite die from this collection, and it's the one that I used to make this piece. I wanted to give you a little tip when you're using the die, and here's the die. I've already run this through my die cutting machine, but I layered it. I've got the gorgeous gold distressed paper, and then the next thing I have is a piece of wax paper. The reason I put the wax paper in is when I run this through, since it's a very intricate die, there are a lot of parts, I am going to be much happier. I can actually lift that die off. There's not much that's in that die. There are a couple pieces of wax paper, but that wax is giving a little bit of, it's kind of lubricating my die so I can pick it right up. And I can take it right off of my cutting plate and get that over here. And I find that it is incredibly easy then to just take the pieces out. All I'm doing is running my fingernail over those holes. And I've also got a piece of wax paper that I can just take off. A lot of people enjoy leaving some of the extra pieces. It does add to the design. It's really up to you if you want to leave those extra pieces in, or if you want to take all the little parts out, then you're going to have a piece that will not have any of the holes filled with the design. So this is an amazing, amazing die, and it's one that I use to cut the dies that are layered underneath that card on the first card that I did. I also wanted to mention the other two, the dies that I used for that card, and the way that I cut that out. This is the painted poppies stamps, and also the painted label dies. And this is another way that you might want to think about saving your stamps and dies together. I got these magnetic sheets on Amazon, and what's really nice is I have the stamps and the dies in one case. So I don't have to look around and figure out what dies correspond with this set. The two dies that I used for this card, I used the label die, and I used a scrap piece of the designer series paper that comes with the textured chic collection. And then I used this to cut out my sentiment. So again, just some really, really fun shapes. And the other shapes you can see that are included on here came from the Chic dies, the different leaves that are included here. And I just cut those out in different colors. So a very basic card. I'm not going to go through and show you how to do this because I think if you look at this design, you can see how it was done. And I still think the effect is absolutely gorgeous. I did add a couple of the pearls just to give a little bit of bling. And there we go. There's one card. It's really nice, I think, to always have a couple of simple cards in your stash or that you can put together quickly, because you never know if you need a birthday card or a wedding card, or unfortunately, maybe a sympathy card. But these are ones that you can definitely pull together pretty fast. The next one I want to show you is the one on the left. And I'm actually going to take this card and just put it to the side for a moment, because I'm going to not recreate this entire thing, but I want to show you some of the parts that I used. And this starts with one of the cards that comes in the pack. This is one that's 4x6. And you can kind of see that that's where it started. And what I did, and I'm going to use a different card to show you how I put this together, but I essentially cut some strips and then rebuilt it. I thought it would be fun to use a separate design and just show you that, you know, switch the card, use essentially the same basic design, and you'll be able to really change the look. And what I'm going to focus on is I'm going to recreate the parts, the pieces that are on this card that were made from a card that looked just like that. And let's do this. This measures 4x6. I want to end up with 6 strips. If you don't have this card, I want to show you another version that you can think about and you might want to make along with me. And this is an A2 card that I made essentially doing the same thing. So my message is, if you don't have the 4x6, that's fine. Grab something that measures 3 3/4 by 5. And you can use that on an A2 card. I'm going to use this one on the Memories and More card to show you, but we're going to do the same thing. This is a piece that I designed with a baby wipe technique a couple of weeks ago. I made a stash and I've been using them, you can tell. And I'm going to show you how you can do the same thing with a piece that's 3 3/4 by 5. Grab a piece of designer series paper, grab anything that has a pattern, and just make sure that that pattern goes vertical. And this is if you don't have something that is 4x6, it's going to be the same thing. All right, so what we're going to want to end up with, we're going to want to end up with 6, using the 4x6, 6 strips that are 1 inch high. If you are doing it with the 3 3/4 by 5, you're going to end up with 5 strips that are 1 inch high. That's the basic difference. And what I want to do is I want to have the 3rd strip down, only have my sentiment on it. And I'm going to stamp some things on the other parts. So that means I need to cut off 2 inches from the top. And then I'm going to cut an inch strip, and I'm going to save that for my sentiment. And then I'm going to stamp the rest. So I'm going to grab my paper trimmer. And I'm going to put this piece in so I can, and again, I'm using 4 by 6. So I'm going to whack off is a technical word, whack off the top 2 inches. I'll come back and I'll do the splitting of that in just a minute. And then I'm going to take off 1 inch. That's going to be the one that I'm going to use for my sentiment. And what that's going to do is, if you're using a 4 by 6, you're going to end up with 3 pieces where you've got 2 inches, 1 inch, and 3 inches. If you've got something that's 3 3/4 by 5, here's what you're going to do. You're still going to start with taking 2 inches off. And you're going to take 1 inch off. And that's going to leave you with 2 inches at the bottom. So either way, what I'm doing is I'm cutting the middle part so that I have a 1 inch strip. And obviously this is shorter because it's 5 inches versus 6. It's narrower because this is 4 inches versus 3 3/4. So what are we going to do with that? Well, on each of the middle pieces, I want to stamp something. And I'm just going to, because I have it out, on each of them, I'm going to stamp thanks. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take these off to the side. And I have my Stamparatus already set up. What I really love about the Stamparatus and using the grid paper is if you look between my fingers, that area is 4 inches wide. So that's going to be where I'm going to have the width I need for the Memories and More card. I can also make sure that for 3 inches, or 3 3/4 inches, excuse me, I can still get that in the middle because I can make sure that I have equidistant from each of the really dark lines, and I will get my sentiment right where I want it to be. So I'm just going to put these in here, and I'm going to make sure that I know what 2 lines I'm dealing with. So I need to get my piece right in like that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp the word thanks on these. And I decided, just because it's easy is good sometimes, I'm going to use early espresso on both of these. So I'm just going to get my little stamp inked up. I love early espresso. I love coffee. So I guess that's probably why I love early espresso. But I just think it is a beautiful, rich color. And for this time of year, it is perfect. Autumn, thank goodness. Here in North Carolina, the temperatures have gone down. We just went through the remnants of Hurricane Ian, and we definitely had some impact, but nothing like the folks down in Florida. We live inland in North Carolina and had some trees down, but other than that, we were fine. My heart goes out to everyone who was impacted in Florida, and I just hope and pray that you are able to get back on your feet very, very soon. Although I know it will take time, but know that we are all praying and thinking about you, and cannot imagine what it was like going through that horrific experience. So I am just doing these kind of in parallel. And if you have designer series paper rather than something that you stamped, that you're doing with your 3 3/4 by 5 piece, you can stamp a sentiment on that if you want to, or just kind of leave it blank and maybe add something on the top later. It's really up to you. All right, so we've got these two options kind of side by side. I like that font. I think it's really fun. So what else are we going to do? Well, on the one that we're looking at on the left, I'm going to do some stamping on the top piece and on the bottom piece. And I'm going to do this with a couple more of the stamps that are from the Textured Chic, Season of Chic stamp set. I'm using these two flower pieces, one that goes in the middle and then one that goes on the outside. And I'm not going to go completely crazy on these, just add a little bit of color. I'm using Pumpkin Pie and get these off to the side. So Pumpkin Pie for the inside and then Soft Succulent for the outside. Those are two colors that I thought worked pretty well with the colors that are in the Memories and More cards. Just going to ink up that stamp, make sure that it's inking up well. And I'm not thinking here. This is one of those I am just going to stamp and get a couple of flowers going here. And I'm also not really paying a lot of attention to where I'm putting these on the page. And we'll do one more kind of off here. And then I'm going to switch over to the Soft Succulent, which is one of my absolutely favorite greens. Nice and subtle, but also very, very warm. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful color. This stamp is one that is an outline. And I have done my best to try to figure out kind of where that outline goes. And honestly, I found it really doesn't matter. It looks good if you can, there's a little notch in the stamped image and there's a little notch. And if you kind of line them up and you just sort of wing it and say it's close enough, it's close enough. No one will know. Just like the person who cuts your hair, no one will know if you line these up or not. And I need to stand up because I can't see this incredibly well. And I'm just going to wing it. And I do like it if it is stamped a little bit wonky because it just adds a little bit of interest. It makes each of the flowers look unique. And I'm not really going to get overly crazy if they're not completely lined up. All right, so I've got those stamped. So we've got our, let's see, we started with 2 inches. Then we've got this piece that goes in the middle. And then we've got 3 inches down at the bottom for this one. Just going to close this up. And I'm going to grab one more stamp just to add a little bit of background. And this is one of my favorite stamps from this set. It is a grungy one. And I love grunge. And I'm just going to put a little bit of texture on here. And I'm going to go with Mango Melody. Why not? We'll see what it looks like. And this is where you can kind of put things back together. They don't have to be perfect, perfect. If you wanted to, you could turn this over and put some washi tape on it just to get them so that they do stay together. I'm not going to get all that crazy, but I do want to get a couple of these stamps in the middle of what I'm doing so that when I cut it apart, it will have a little bit more interest. And you can do full ink or second generation ink, really whatever makes you happy. And then I'm going to do a couple little second generation inks on that piece, and we're going to be all done. Now, if I bring back in the piece that we have going on over here, I'm not going to stamp anymore on the pieces that you see on the right. That's enough, I think. I think that will work just fine. But now we're ready to go ahead and cut these up and get these ready to go on the card. And let's just make sure we know what we are doing. So that first piece on the left is 2 inches wide. I want each of them to be 1 inch. So I'm going to just cut that one right in half. The last piece, the one that was on the bottom, is 3 inches wide. I want to have 3 individual pieces. And I'm just gonna, it really doesn't matter if they're not absolutely perfect. We've got 1, and this is the last piece. All right, so we're gonna end up with 6 pieces. I'm going to go ahead and cut these up as well. This is the one that was 3 3/4 by 5. I'm taking that top piece that was 2 inches and the bottom piece that was 2 inches. And we're just going to end up with strips, maybe different widths, but they're all going to be 1 inch high. And let's see what we've got. So at this point, for the Memories and More, we have 6 pieces that look like this. For the piece that I started that was 3 3/4 by 5, we have 5 pieces that look like this. This is for the Memories and More card. This is for an A2 card. So the ones on the left will end up looking something like that. Obviously a completely different pattern because of the card that I chose. The ones on the right will end up looking something like this. So the next thing that you're going to do is grab a pair of scissors, and don't think about this. Just go from a corner on the bottom, cut, and you can do it however you want. You can do so that the strips, I don't want to cut off a lot of that flour. You can do it so that you have angles coming down toward each other. You can do it so that you have, let's see, it's really whatever makes you happy. You can have angles that are parallel. On the thanks one, I might want to do it kind of the opposite of what I did on that top one. And I'm really just playing, and they're not going to necessarily be the same angle on everything, which is half the fun. And let's see, I'll do it that way. You get the picture. And it really is fun to just cut. Just do whatever you want to do. I kind of like that way because that'll leave out a lot of the flour. And I'll do that one like that. All right. I'm not going to cut these up because it's going to be the exact same thing, and you already get the idea. But what do you do with them then? Well, if you are using one of the Memory and More cards, what I would suggest as an option is that you could take the piece that was cut or another piece that you might have and go ahead and glue that down. You can also tape it down. It will stay with tape. And I think that's what I will probably do, is just grab a little piece of tape because I'm going to be putting some more adhesive on here. And I don't really need to get completely crazy about where it's going to go. I can change that if I want. And then I'm just going to start playing, and I'm going to get my thanks kind of in the middle-ish. And I'm just going to start lining these pieces up however I want. And on the other card, what I actually did is I tucked this up underneath. And you can overlap some of those pieces and put them a little cockeyed if you want. You can just play and make whatever design you want to do. And I'll probably bring that gold piece around just a little bit. And I'm just going to get these how I want them to go. And the way that you would finish off the card is once you've figured out exactly where those pieces are going to go, and it looks kind of cool because it looks like the design flows, but that sentiment is going to get popped up with dimensionals so that it does come right out at you. You're going to adhere the pieces. I used Tombow. It was just easy. And I stuck my pieces down, and then I put my thanks right in the middle with some dimensionals and just pop that up. And I added a few of the die cuts. And again, those came from the Chic dies. And the dies that I used on those included the pieces that are the flowers. So there are several that are flower outlines. And I had some leftover designer series paper from the collection. That's where you can see this gold and the evening evergreen coming through. And then just added a couple of gems to that. So that's that card. And let's just take a look at the one that was done with the A2 and kind of the same design. I ended up putting those directly on all 5 pieces. And then rather than the way I did it this time, where I have the sentiment in the middle, I used some stacked dies and put sending wishes at the bottom. But I think this is an idea that you can take and you can use, whether it is with a card from a Memories and More pack, whether it is a piece that you have stamped, maybe it's a piece of designer series paper. Just take a piece and cut it into strips, trim off the edges and rearrange those strips so that it still looks like a nice flowing design. And it really gives, I think, a really cool effect. So that's the second card that I wanted to show you. And now I'm going to bring back in the third card. And this is one that I had a lot of fun with. One of the things that really continues to amaze me about card makers and artists is how much they share. When I need inspiration, and I'm sure you do the same thing, we can go to Pinterest, we can go to YouTube. There's so many places that you can go to find different designs, different things that you might want to case, to actually make. I'm just trying to get my camera to move over a little bit, and I think I have screwed that up. So I'm going to pull this over to my right. And I was fortunate. I was kind of hunting around and I found a really pretty design on Pinterest that I thought I would case. I would copy, but I would switch it up and make it my own. And that's what I did for this card. So this is still using a Memory and More card, but it is a Z fold. And let me show you what that means. I'm sure you're familiar with a Z fold. It actually opens up like this. And it has a really beautiful design on the front. I'm going to show you quickly how I put this one together. And I hope that you use this as an inspiration for another card that you might make. So let's take a look. This started with one of the 3x4 cards. that come in the Memories and More pack. And I had a very, very difficult time narrowing down what I was going to use. This one I decided to use for this card. It's definitely different. It has a different color pattern and a different sentiment, but I'm going to show you the basic steps that I use to make this card, but I'm going to use this Memory and More card to do that. All right, we're going to start with one of the cards. And what you're going to do is you're first going to score the front in half. And since these measure 4 1/4 inches wide, that means that I'm going to score at 2 1/8. And if I were doing this with a regular A2 card, it would be a little bit different. I'm just going to turn that on its side. So I've got it in my scoring board, and I have, you can see it's 4 1/4 is where the middle is. So I'm going to go to 2 1/8, and I'm just going to score that at 2 1/8. So right down the middle. Okay. And again, if you're using an A2 card, when you do that, just make sure that you score right down the middle of your card. Now, normally you would fold so that this half would be the front of your card. You don't want to do that. You actually want to fold it in the opposite direction, which is kind of counterintuitive. So what I'm doing is I'm folding that backwards, if you want to think of it as being backwards, and just making sure that I have a really nice crease there. And then I'm going to fold up on the front half of that card. So I'm just going to bring it around and fold that up. And now I have a really nice Z fold. And this is how the Z fold works. So the front of your card is going to be right here, and you're going to see half of the image that is really meant to be the front of the card. And then when you open it up, you see the other half. And we're going to physically open the card like this. And it does have a little bit of a Z, even though that's backwards, a Z shape. So the pieces that I used for this, I shot my stash, and I found some older paper. I believe this is Mossy Meadow. And I just thought that it worked really, really, really well with the colors that are in the Memories and More. And I cut 2 pieces. That's going to be the first 2 pieces I'm going to use. One of those is going to be on the inside, and one of them will end up being on the outside. Now, I don't know if you can see this really well, but what I tried to do when I put the card together is I tried to make sure that those 2 pieces line up. In other words, that the green on the front and the green on the inside, that they line up, they're one behind each other. And that, I think, is important in this kind of card, because if you have them kind of cattywampus, great word, you're going to be able to see the back piece of green, and you don't want to do that. So how can you do that easily? Well, the way I did it, and I cut this piece out with the largest rectangle die, stitched rectangle die that I had. I want to center this on the back side of that card. And I've done this before. I've showed you that you can use your Stamparatus as not only a tool for stamping and placing your stamps exactly where you want them, but you can also use your Stamparatus as a second pair of hands. And I do this a lot. When I do it, I put my Stamparatus down so that the opening, the part that you can slide past, is on the right. I'm a righty, so I want to have that open. And then what I can do is, if I'm trying to get this centered, and if you're not persnickety, you can ignore this part. But what I'm trying to do is I'm putting my piece of paper so that it's in the middle. And I can then have grid lines so that I can see where I'm going to actually adhere my piece of paper. And again, if this is just way too persnickety for you, then skip this and go ahead and adhere that piece that you want to use in the back in the center. I'm just going to use a little bit of glue. I don't need an awful lot. And because I'm going to move this around to try to get it in the middle, I'm not going to put glue way, way over on the side. And that way, if I end up moving that paper around, it's not going to gush out where I don't want it to gush. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm eyeballing some of the lines and just trying to get it straight-ish. It's good enough. Yeah, it looks pretty okay to me. All right. And then I'll go ahead and give that a little bit of a push. And that's really the only thing that I'm going to need to have as precisely put on the card as I can, because that's now going to be my guide. For the front piece, I cut exactly the same size, but I decided that I wanted to give a little bit of texture to that front piece. So I used the new Time Worn Type 3D embossing folder. This one is a lot of fun. It's got some really fun texture, and it does have some letters. So before I put this down, I'm just going to take a look and make sure that the letters are reading vertically, so it doesn't look like I have something upside down. And what I'm going to do here is I have a guide as far as where I need to put some glue, because I'm going to glue this piece right on top, literally right on top. I'm going to line it up on the right hand side, but I only want to put glue right behind this half. And I can see that I need glue in here. And just like I did on the piece that I just put down, I'm not going to put an awful lot because I don't want it to ooze out, and I'm not going to need a lot either. So I know that I will cover where I just put that glue, and I'm going to use that right hand side. I can see when I hold the two pieces together, I can see if they are lining up, and that way it's going to look like it was intentional. All right, so we have the makings of our card. Then I used the next size rectangle from the Stitched Rectangle dies, and I cut out a piece of basic white. This is going to be for a greeting. You can also, if you want, do some stamping on this before you put it onto your card. And I thought that was a really kind of clean look. It brings the white from the background. I cut out the same shape. And this is a piece, I think this is Grapefruit Grove. And again, this is a piece of retired paper, sorry, but I was shopping my stash, and I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that to the front and try to get that kind of centered. And I looked at the colors that are in the Memories and More cards, and this one works really well also. So I love it when I have some extra paper in my stash that I can use. So let me bring this in, and I'm going to bring this in. And what I love about these two is your sentiment is already done for you. You know, you don't need to do a heck of a lot of stamping here. The sentiment is already done, but I wanted to give it a little bit of a something something. So what I decided to do is to put some twine around the card, and then to put a little bit of a bow on there. And the twine, you can kind of cheat on this if you want. I need to get some more of the twine because I'm running out. I have saved parts from past paper pumpkin kits. I have squandered. I looked everywhere yesterday It's embarrassing because I found some that I didn't know that I had. And I'm just going to take that and kind of wrap it around a couple of times. Let's see if I can get 3 out of this. Awesome. And I'm going to use the magic of Scotch tape to actually lay this down. So if I want to get it, I was just measuring to see how many I could get around. I'm going to go ahead and start that on the back. Get it about where I want it to be. I think this is linen twine. I will take advantage of the upcoming free shipping on Tuesday and look around to see what I need, because there are a couple things that I need. So I'm just going to wrap that around and go ahead and tape it again. All right, and then I made a little bow on a bow maker. And one thing that I really like, I'm not a big person as far as glue dots. I'm just not a glue dot person, but I thought that these little flowers were super, super pretty. These are some of the flowers that come from the dies, from the Chic dies. And I've got a couple that I did in white. Get this out of the way so I can work on this without. So I'm just going to kind of play and see how I like these set up. And I can also put them off the card a little bit because I'll use dimensionals when all is said and done. And I might move my bow out of here for a minute. So I went ahead, as you can see, and I die cut a couple of these flowers. I'm just going to put these on first with some glue dots. These are going to be kind of on their own. Yeah, just checking to see where I like these, and probably do 3, since 3 is usually a nice number, not an even number to look at. I'm trying not to cover up all of the flowers that are in the design. I'm overthinking this. Definitely overthinking this. All right. And I think I'm going to grab one more of these. Yeah, it's not bad. All right, so we'll put one more up in the corner. On the other card that I showed you, I used the leaf dies, and I'll show you that in just a sec. But I just wanted to add a little different. I'm going to tuck that one right like that. And then I will use some of the crystal effects. This is the shimmery crystal effects. I think this works a lot better than glue dots when you're putting a bow on your project. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of the shimmery crystal effects. It's a thick liquid right on top of that twine. And then I can bring in my bow and put that right on the top. And that will dry without a problem. And then if I want to add a couple of fun little gems, these champagne rhinestones, I just got these a little while ago and I'm in love with them. They go so well with the colors that are in this set, and they really add just a beautiful, beautiful kind of hint of color, as well as a pop of twinkle. Pop of twinkle, that's kind of fun. And let's going to add one more here. And then I'm going to use some dimensionals and pop that up on top of the card. The crystal effects hopefully will be set enough that I'm not going to disturb it. If not, I will fix that momentarily. Making sure I put some in the middle and some on the sides. This is a great way, if you haven't seen that before, to get your dimensionals kind of up and popped up so you can use them. Sometimes they can be a little hard just to get started if you've got a new pack. And my bow is sticking well. Awesome. Just going to peel off the wax paper and put this one down. So I hope that, you know, as we're going through this and looking at different designs, you know, you may not like the designs that I'm creating. That's awesome. And I hope that if you don't, that at least you've got a tip or trick or, you know, something that you'll be able to use to create your own designs. That's what this is all about. It's all about sharing and just having ideas that you can use and make your own. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that on the top. The other one I brought up a little bit. I'm going to do that again. I just think that's kind of fun. I'm not centering it vertically. I'm centering it and putting it on the card so that the width of the border is the same at the top, but it's definitely different down at the bottom. And what that can allow you to do, if you want to, and I did that intentionally, is if I get out some of my little pearls, I can actually add those so that that bottom is going to pop a little bit as well. So you have a little bit more room to put some embellishments down at the bottom and kind of bring it out. And we'll do one more. I can get this off over here. There we go. I love tucking the little embellishments kind of right up underneath, although I think that looks better like that. All right. So you can see by using two completely different cards from the card pack, but essentially the same Z-fold design, you get two very, very different looking cards. Very different. If I pull back in the other example of what I made using the large card, you can get something completely different. And then if I bring back in the other card that is really taking products and essentially layering them, not changing them, but layering them, you get all sorts of different looks. So I hope that you found some inspiration. And again, you don't need the Memories and More cards. You can use your own designer series paper, pieces that you've stamped, whatever it is, but you've got stuff that you can make some absolutely stunning cards. Until next time, and please share what you make. I would absolutely love to see it.